My name is Paul Caruana Galizia. I'm a Maltese journalist and I work as a reporter at Tortoise Media in London. I grew up in Malta where my mother Daphne Caruana Galizia was a journalist working for many years. She was in fact Malta's first political columnist to write under their own name, and in fact the first woman to write a column as well. As time went by in Malta and the country changed and became richer and more globalized, she began reporting as an investigative journalist would. So a lot on government corruption, a lot on financial crime. And she did that really up until her death in 2017 in a car bombing. So in Malta, the environment for investigative journalism remains largely the same as it was when my mother was working. So very high risk, very difficult. There are some new protections, but not many and not enough. So there was a public inquiry into her death, which made more than 100 recommendations on how to improve Malta's media freedom environment, and none of them have been implemented. And in the UK, the problems are different, I'd say. It is a very costly job to do there because any involvement of lawyers, which is what happens all the time, really raises the price of your work. So even before publication, right, even before we've entered into an exchange with the person we're writing about, we usually spend a great deal of money on lawyers, on advising us, on guiding us, and so on. And then we have an exchange of letters, usually with the other person's lawyer, and then sometimes they file a complaint, and then the costs keep mounting. There's always the threat that they'll actually sue, which then presents like a potential problem worth millions and millions of pounds. So because of those costs, a lot of people don't even touch a story because they know it would be too expensive even to bring up to the point of publication. That jurisdiction needs much better mechanisms to assess claims much earlier on and strike them out if they're obviously without merit. I think there needs to be a discussion about legal costs in that country because so much of it comes down to that. You know, legal damages are capped. They're not that high at the end of the day, but it's always the legal costs that frighten people. When a tip comes in, the first question is, if true, is it in the public interest? If you feel like you have a positive answer to that question, then you begin that exercise. Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? And you really test every part of what you've been told. But the kind of key consideration is always, and this is the public interest point, is there an abuse of power? Has someone done something they shouldn't have with the power they were given or the power they've acquired? And that's what's got to drive every story. So the last two stories we did weren't about politics at all. They were sexual assault stories. But in both cases, very powerful men who exploited that power to prey on very vulnerable women. I think the way journalists and the public can come together on these stories is maybe a bit of a selfish request, is that the public believes the stories. And something happened over the past few years where a lot of people began to feel like journalists aren't on their side. And that needs to be overcome. There's nothing more frustrating as a reporter to spend months, maybe even years on a story, for then people to feel suspicious that you've done it, when really you're doing it for them. You're doing it to show them, look, this is a real problem and you might care about it. I think journalists need to be better at explaining how they do their work. And this is something I realized over the last two stories, which again were not really about politics at all. I realized a lot of people thought that in stories about sexual assault, for example, journalists simply hear from women and then repeat their allegations in a paper or on a podcast. And I wish more people knew that months and months of work goes into testing every woman's allegations, and we ask them to support their accounts with a lot of material. And we really do examine them, precisely because ultimately we're on the public side, not even on the women's side, on the public side.